Okay, welcome back. We're looking now at one of the more recent, quote-unquote, famous authors, Simon Sinek, who gave a TED Talk on the power of why. And this conversation resonated a lot with leaders across the globe, especially business leaders, in ways that you wouldn't necessarily anticipate before. But what, when watching this and using it, do you think is the reason that this is becoming such an important conversation, the power of why?
Yeah, I sort of see it in terms of like globalization and, renewed technology booms, in that, if I have a product, a customer can easily find another product similar to mine. But what would differentiate mine? What would make mine stand out in the market, that would make them want to buy mine over another one? And I think that that's sort of what spoke to me about the video, and what probably speaks to a lot of people, is that the why. Is that if the why is clearly articulated, then they can connect to that product at a human level. And it goes beyond spending money. It's spending money to sort of somehow make myself more effective. It's connected to me now, the product.
Great. What about you?
I think one of the things that was most interesting was in the power of why is focusing an organization around the principle that's greater than the products that they sell or the services that they provide. It's this overarching vision that everybody is motivated by. And the examples that were pointed out throughout the book, Apple being one, and showing how they were able to really start a technology revolution by starting with why, and using some comparative examples of Dell and other companies that weren't as successful. And it really comes back to setting a company culture around this business of why.
Business of why. What is the question why? What does it? Why is why an important question?
I think why sort of helps highlight the underpinnings of the ethos. So you have like the organizational ethos, but there's an underpinning there, something that anchors us in the progress that we make. The first thing that comes to mind for me is Disney, for example. And I first thought of this when reading the Collins piece, but I think it becomes really highlighted here, in that Disney could, prior to its later developments, could have just been seen as like a theme park experience or whatever. But by anchoring in, if you think about their why, if their why is, I want to spread joy and bring magical joy to children's lives, then that allows you to sort of, and if that's now the product, the why, then you can do that in all kinds of ways beyond the theme park. You can do a cruise, and you can do movies or whatever. And so I think the why sort of helps both anchor the product that we currently have, but it also helps sort of keep us focused even throughout progress, even as we move forward.
Well, I think the why really focuses on motivation and tapping into a belief beyond just the basic commercial product or service that's provided on both inside the company and externally. And it creates this visceral reaction that motivates people internally to do better and externally to consume the product.
Great. And I want to remind students of the first session that we had, where we're saying modern management includes an answer to the question why. And we said it is effectiveness, it's efficiency, and ethics. Right? Ethics was the why question. Efficiency was the how question. Effectiveness was the what question. Now, my question to you is, in a way, why do you think this simple thought is now so popular? Like, this is not something new, right? Why this hype about Simon Sinek? Why this hype about this question?
I think similar to the way that Collins used, actually did a empirical study. I think Sinek taps into the same thing, where it's fact based. It's supported by data, and that they're universal principles, and maybe many people find them to be self evident, but they're actually backed by rigor and study.
But why? I mean, if this is sort of potentially universal, why has nobody else come up with this before? Or why is it so rarely sort of, well, I'm just curious, like, why do you think this is now an important conversation?
I think that I reflect on the idea that we're in one of the most information-rich times in human history. And part of the consequence of that means that we're sharing ideas worlds away. We're sharing cultural experiences worlds away. And as people continue to participate in markets, they're participating differently. They're participating with a sense of culture and a sense of, a world that they could see, or a idea that they could, participate in. So it's not like where before you had the internet, you had whoever's in your neighborhood, and that was it, and it was very insular in that way. Now it's more of an opportunity to dream. And I think when you have people participating in markets like that, you need more than just a good product. You need a good story.
Why though?
Because people have other options, and people have motivations beyond just the product.
Okay, and you were mentioning that it comes down to motivation. And one of the lectures that we had was about motivation, right? And I just want to confirm with the online students here that the drive to comprehend that we were mentioning in the 4-drive theory is what Simon Sinek is speaking to. It is important. And what I would argue is that currently in the traditional business culture that may be good but not great, people don't have the answer for why, and they're missing it. And that's why maybe there's sort of like this now yearning. It's like, oh my God, you're giving us language that we can use in a way that we can speak in organizations and businesses about something that's fundamentally meaningful to us that we haven't been able to do before that. And that in many ways, this kind of conversation opens the door for what you're saying. Is like, what is it that makes us more human? How can we engage in more human forms, deeply human forms, in the market, in the business, right? What does that sort of conjure up with you when I'm saying it that way?
Yeah, in my own experience owning a business, motivation has to go beyond money, and it has to go to a greater purpose, whether it's your client or whether it's the type of work that you do. But it has to, in my experience, it has to go beyond money, and I think that really speaks to this business of why there's a greater sense of purpose to what you're doing, besides just showing up to work and collecting a paycheck. I mean, it's that basic of a human response.
Yeah, I mean, similar to me and the consultation work I do with small startups, it's typically the startups that I choose to work with are very connected to people. And I think that we are in a time in human history to where we are more connected to each other because we have opportunities to be more connected to each other. And so, not just does the product or the organization connect with the people, the customers, but are we connecting internally and that kind of thing. So I think that sort of that's how I conceptualize, the why is in terms of, it really helps us connect with our humanity, helps us connect with, the humanity of the people we're intending to serve, really, with our product.
Okay. Now, one other conversation that we've had in this course is about employee engagement and how little there is, and how many people are, as you're saying, Brian, just coming in, collecting a paycheck and moving out and sort of going through the motions. They're not very engaged. I would suggest to the online students to just look and see whether this Power of Why can speak to that malaise, to that epidemic of low employee engagement. Because once you have a higher purpose, once you can articulate it, typically people get excited, right? They find it more meaningful. They do have a higher level purpose. They have a reason to get up in the morning, right? And oftentimes companies are very poorly conceptualizing the why, right? And I don't know how you see that in the organizations that you're working with or the organizations that you're working with in terms of, do they have a clear social purpose? Do they have a clear why? Do they have anything that goes beyond, yes, you're here because you're doing this product, you have this kind of functional ability, you have XYZ expertise, so here's your paycheck. How do you see that in your
It reminds me of an example that Sinek brought up with NASA. The janitor is contributing to putting a man on the moon, and this single unity of purpose that created with inside of NASA in that mission set. And as you described that, it went from the chief of operations all the way down to the janitor. Everybody had the same goal in mind, and it all fit together in one piece. So that was an example that resonated with me based on the last discussion.
Yeah, came up for me specifically one startup that I was working with, and they were an online education platform, and the internal sort of understanding of why drove how then the customer service people spoke to the students that they were trying to recruit. And what it did was it served by articulating the philosophy of why we're doing it this way. This isn't just an online education. This is an opportunity for you to take care of your child and and still forward your life and these kinds of things, right? So once that started being communicated, we found all kind of metrics that improved, including retention of students, enrollment, and that kind of thing. But it started with the leader sort of defining the why, communicating the why, and then without even asking really for it to happen, some of the customer service representatives started to communicate that why in just basic marketing conversations.
Were easier that way, right? And it was sort of trickled down in some way. Great. Well, I want to conclude this section thanking you and sharing that with the online students, we've had a couple of conversations that connect with this. We've had the conversation about what the modern understanding of management is, that it now includes an answer to the question why, in addition to what and how. And we had a conversation about who we are as human beings, as a foundation of understanding excellence individually, but in teams and in organizations. And one of the big pieces is that the drive to comprehend, this need for us to make purposeful meaning out of what we're doing every day. This is what Simon Sinek may be speaking to, the power of why. If you have a meaningful purpose, then you are differently motivated. You're more fully human. You actually are engaging in conversations that have purpose and that probably are more effective than other types of conversations that are about the how and the what, and that maybe people don't resonate with as much. So I want to just ask the online students, ask you to think about that. How does it connect with all the other pieces that we have been talking about? Because the power of why is something that is missing out of current or traditional management conversations. And that's what I would say is so critical about this. And this is why this is becoming viral, because it's missing at so many levels and people are yearning for it. And they're disengaged at work because they don't have it. They're not performing at excellence levels because they're missing it, and because they can't tell a good story about why they should be getting up in the morning and asking themselves, why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? WTF, right? So this is basically another conversation in the puzzle of how organizations can become excellent, how teams can become excellent, how individuals become excellent, right?